In California, twin siblings David and Jennifer spend their days very differently. Jennifer is a popular girl and goes on dates with any boy she wants. Meanwhile, David is rather shy and stares at his crush from afar while only imagining talking to her. He likes spending his evenings at home watching a black and white sitcom from the 50s called Pleasantville, to the point where he can recite every line of dialogue from memory. Sometimes he overhears his divorced mother arguing with his dad about custody, but David just turns up the TV volume instead of offering support. In the evening after their mother is gone, Jennifer wants to watch a concert with her incoming date and David wants to watch the Pleasantville Marathon. The twins fight over the remote control, which falls to the floor and breaks. Suddenly the doorbell rings and Jennifer answers it, only to find a repairman who claims to have come for the broken TV. Jennifer lets him in while wondering how he knew if nobody called him and noticing his old-timey van. As lightning starts outside, the repairman pulls out a strange-looking remote to give to David, saying this one has a little more oomph. On his way out, the repairman comments on Jennifer's date, not explaining how he knew that either. Afterward, David turns on the television using the strange remote. He and Jennifer start fighting over it again at the same time that the two teens on Pleasantville also fight over a book. Suddenly the remote glows and the twins are transported into the television. They are now part of a black and white world, and even their clothes and hair have changed to match the characters. At that moment, George, the father from the series, reminds them it's time for school. It seems the twins have truly taken the place of the series siblings and the other characters even call them by the fictional names. The TV repairman appears and tells Jennifer and David that they are a miracle, and this is happening thanks to David's encyclopedic knowledge of the series. He also shows them that in their world, Jennifer's date arrives at the house but leaves when nobody answers, insulting her. The twins demand to be taken back, but the repairman is offended because they don't appreciate his gift and disappears. After they hide the remote, the mother Betty forces the twins to have breakfast, which is huge and full of greasy foods. Then the twins make their way to school, and David recognizes all the characters from the series. Jennifer is starting to freak out, so David insists that they have to play along until the repairman gets back. Suddenly a fire truck appears and a group of 5 firemen get out, but they're only here to get a cat out of a tree. As Jennifer complains about the situation, a high schooler named Skip says hi to her. Jennifer immediately likes him and now looks forward to going to school. Later in geography class, the teacher tells the students about the few streets in town. Jennifer asks what's outside of Pleasantville, confusing everyone else. The teacher just answers that the end of Main Street is just the beginning again. Meanwhile, David practices with the basketball team. He used to be bad at sports, but now he can land every throw without issues. Everyone else on the team scores every time too, confirming this place runs on TV logic. Then Skip approaches David to ask if he should ask Jennifer out. David recognizes this as the beginning of an episode and tells Skip that he should wait. Skip gets upset and fails his next shot, leaving everyone in shock. Realizing making out of character decisions may ruin this world, David rushes to tell Jennifer to go out with Skip. In return, Jennifer shares how weird her day has been. All the books are empty, and when she tries to light a tissue on fire, it doesn't burn. This explains why the firemen only rescue cats here. At that moment, Jennifer's giggling friends come to tell her that Skip is planning to ask her out and give her his pin, and Jennifer finally agrees to play along. Later at home, Jennifer dresses for her date with Skip and comments on the conservative clothes. David tells her not to worry because people don't get naughty in this world, which disappoints her. Afterward, David rushes to his job at the soda shop, where he's greeted by his boss Bill. Since David was late, Bill says he just kept wiping the counter without knowing what to do next. David makes him stop and explains that Bill can make fries even if David hasn't put the napkins out yet. In the evening, the soda shop fills with teenagers, including Skip and Jennifer on their date. Skip wants to take things slowly and is nervous about holding hands, which bores Jennifer so much that she goes to the bathroom for a break. To her surprise, there aren't any toilets. Her friends soon appear and show excitement over Jennifer possibly ending up in Lover's Lane with Skip. Now that she knows about that place, Jennifer goes back to the table and tells Skip to take her there. The couple leaves in Skip's car and David immediately guesses his sister's naughty intentions, so he tries to stop them to no avail. At Lover's Lane, Jennifer hits on a very nervous Skip and convinces him to do the dirty. Skip is very confused because his body never behaved like that before, so Jennifer has to explain it's normal and finally manages to give him his first time. Meanwhile, Bill shows up at David's home to tell him that he closed up the shop all by himself, which he never did before. Bill starts sharing how proud he is of being spontaneous for a change, but he freezes when Betty passes by and says hi. It's clear they're both attracted to each other. Later, Skip drops Jennifer at her house and David worries about how changed he looks. As he leaves, Skip is shocked to see a rose in the garden is actually red. The next day, David looks for the repairman on the television but finds nothing except for the Weather Channel, which always reports good weather. Later, during basketball practice, David sees Skip telling his teammates the things he did with Jennifer. Then when they throw the ball, everyone misses. Worried, David goes to Jennifer and tells her that she's messing with this universe. However, Jennifer points out the locals weren't truly happy before. At that moment, a girl passes by blowing bubble gum that is actually pink, meaning Jennifer's idea is spreading. Soon dozens of couples end up at Lover's Lane to get dirty. This slowly causes things in town to change. The basketball team gets worse at basketball, the furniture store begins selling double beds, and more people start seeing colors here and there. David keeps on searching the television for the repairman to no avail. One night at the soda shop, David realizes that the teenagers are much more liberated than before, openly kissing and listening to rock and roll. He also finds Bill hiding behind the counter because he's run out of cheeseburgers and he's having an existential crisis over hating his job. David points out that people can't always like what they do, and Bill points out that's pretty sad. He also admits that his favorite time of year is Christmas because he gets to paint a mural of a different thing. Then he pulls out a book of photos and shows David all the different murals he has painted, which are quite good. Meanwhile at the barbershop, George and his friends discuss the fact that the basketball team has been losing. But when Mayor Bob comes, he tells them that's impossible because the basketball team never loses. At home, Betty and her friends play cards. One of the women talks about her daughter whose tongue turned pink and how the color has spread to her lips. Another woman says that she saw a green car in front of the ice cream shop. While Betty listens, she picks up her cards and is shocked to see that they have color. Later in the evening, Betty asks Jennifer what happens at Lover's Lane, so Jennifer has to teach her about the birds and the bees. Betty can't believe what she's hearing and says George would never do anything like that, so Jennifer teaches her how to do it with just her hand. Moments later while George is in bed, Betty draws a bath and follows Jennifer's instructions. She loves the sensation and when she reaches her climax, the bathroom gains full colors and the tree outside lights on fire. Seeing this, David runs to the fire station yelling fire but none of the firemen react, so David says cat instead. The firemen rush to David's house, but they don't know what to do with the fire, so David grabs the hose from the truck and puts out the flames while the neighbors come out to watch. The next day, David receives a medal for his heroism. After the ceremony, Margaret gifts him some homemade cookies, which shocks David because in the series she likes someone else. On the way to the soda shop, David sees a couple kissing and both of them are completely colorful now. Inside, he finds more colorful teens listening to jazz, but they all freeze when they see David. They want to know how David knew how to put out the fire, so he says that's what firemen did in the place he used to live. The group then asks where he lived and freaks out when he says that he lived outside of Pleasantville. David starts telling them stories of the outside world and a teen remembers a mention of a river in Huckleberry Finn, which he pulls out. The book isn't empty anymore, so Jennifer explains that while she was recounting the plot of the novel to the others, the pages filled in. However, it stopped midway because she never finished it. The teens ask David to tell them how the novel ends, and when he does so, the other pages fill in too. Excited, the teens bring out more books and David fills them all. Soon long lines of teenagers are at the library, wanting to check out more books. The men at the barbershop start to worry about all these changes in their traditions. Bob doesn't like where things are going either, so he visits George to rant about things like double beds and people quitting their jobs. Then Bob invites him to become a member of the Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce, and George happily agrees. To celebrate, George calls Betty to prepare some snacks, yet she doesn't show up. David offers to search for her and finds her crying at the kitchen sink because she's become colorful. She's afraid of being judged by her husband, so David grabs her makeup and helps her look gray again. Now she can go out since George never stopped calling her name instead of actually standing up. The next day at the soda shop, David gives Bill a book about famous paintings. The sight of such beauty truly shakes Bill up and he says he'll never be able to paint like that because he can't see colors. Moments later, David asks Margaret out, and she agrees. Jumping in excitement, David returns home and is shocked to see the repairman on the TV. The repairman is considering sending the twins back because they're changing too much, but David just turns the TV off. Then David checks on Jennifer and is surprised to find her reading D.H. Lawrence. She doesn't understand why she hasn't gained color, so David suggests that perhaps it's not just doing the naughty that triggers it. Sometime later, David and Margaret drive to Lover's Lane for their date. Almost everything in this area is colorful, and most couples are reading to each other while also getting their colors. David shares some stories from outside Pleasantville and Margaret feeds him fruits she's picked, even going to a tree to grab a fresh apple. Meanwhile, Betty is walking through town and notices a large painting on the window of the soda shop. She goes inside and finds Bill painting in new styles. He invites her to look at his paintings and shows her the famous art in the book. When Betty notices that the woman in the painting is crying, she cries as well and accidentally wipes off some of her makeup. Afraid, she tries to leave, but Bill stops her because he wants to see her beautiful color and wipes more makeup off. At home, Jennifer is still reading when she realizes she's chilly, so she puts on a sweater. She also realizes she's having trouble with the words and puts on her glasses. It's as if she was slowly transforming into a local. At that moment, Skip throws pebbles at Jennifer's window and reminds her of their naughty date, but Jennifer says she's busy studying and dismisses him. Minutes later, Thunder appears for the first time in this town. George arrives home and calls for Betty, but she isn't around and didn't leave dinner ready for him. At the soda shop, Bill is painting Betty. When she gets up to observe the thunderstorm, she sees Bill's work and is surprised by the result. At Lover's Lane, it begins to rain very hard and everyone gets scared, so they run to a gazebo for shelter. David teaches them that rain isn't dangerous and walks out, laughing at the experience. At the same time, George also walks out in the rain, upset because his routine has been ruined. Not knowing what else to do, he goes to the bowling alley, where Bob and the other guys are horrified to hear his story. One of the guys shows a burn from an iron on the back of his shirt, explaining his wife has been distracted too. All the men hate losing control of their wives and agree to team up to fight against the changes in town. At the soda shop, Bill and Betty kiss. The next morning, the first rainbow ever appears over Pleasantville. Bill and Betty wake up and discover they're fully colorful, so is the soda shop. At home, Jennifer has also gained color. Margaret wakes up at Lover's Lane and is colorful too, but sadly David is still in black and white. Soon a town meeting is announced to discuss the changes. George tries to bring Betty to the meeting, but she refuses. An argument ensues as George says the color is temporary and that a wife should always have dinner ready for her husband, but Betty is done. She informs him she's prepared some meals for him in advance and teaches him how to heat them up, then she leaves. Meanwhile, David gifts Margaret her first umbrella, which used to be a theater prop. At that moment, a thug drives by and reminds them of the meeting while making fun of Margaret for being colorful. At the meeting, Mayor Bob addresses people's concerns about colors and says that they need to decide what is pleasant and what isn't, proposing to keep those categories separated. At the soda shop, Bill scrapes his mural off the window before noticing that Betty is coming towards him with a suitcase. The next day, many shops begin putting up signs that say no colors. A crowd gathers around the soda shop to stare in shock at the mural on the window, which is a painting of Betty with no clothes on. After checking out the mural too, David walks by the television store and sees the repairman on the screen. He wants to send David back to his world, however David refuses and just leaves. Suddenly he sees a group of high school boys harassing Betty, so David rushes to defend her by punching one of the guys. Terrified because they never saw violence before, the boys run away while David discovers he's finally gained color. Betty hugs him to congratulate him. Back at the mural, the crowd is shouting angrily and a man throws a rock through the window, breaking it. The crowd cheers and the need for violence spreads, so more people start attacking the shop. At first it's just the front, but soon they go inside and start destroying all the furniture, supplies, and other paintings. That night, the Grays start burning books in protest. Skip wants to burn Jennifer's book, but she snatches it out of his hands and runs away. She bumps into David and the girls, and together they go to the soda shop where they find Bill tidying up. The group immediately volunteers to help him. Soon Bob holds another meeting at town hall, telling the citizens that they need to set a code of conduct for the town. Later David reads the new rules to the colorful people at the soda shop. The rules put a stop to vandalism and urge courteous treatment, but also announce the closing of Lover's Lane and the public library. Things like rock and jazz music, umbrellas, big beds, and colorful paint are forbidden. Everyone is upset and afraid to turn on the jukebox, but David turns it on anyway and reminds everyone to fight for their rights. That night, all the colorful people sleep at the soda shop. David promises Bill he'll paint again, and they get an idea the next day. The newspaper boy is surprised to find David and Bill sleeping underneath a colored mural that depicts various prohibitions in the town, like couples kissing and books burning. A crowd soon forms to voice their disapproval, causing David and Bill to get arrested. Sometime later, George visits David in jail while eating cocktail olives right from the jar. He explains that Betty left 3 days ago and that he can't tell what day it is because his routine was broken. George wonders what went wrong and David says nothing, it's just that people change. At David and Bill's trial, they are charged with the intentional use of prohibited paint colors. David asks for a lawyer, but Bob says they aren't using one to keep things pleasant. Furious, David starts a speech about the important things in life, pointing out that there's no difference between the black and white people and the colorful people. David asks George if he misses something else besides the cleaning and cooking, making him look at his wife. Crying, George stares at Betty and admits she looks the most beautiful he ever saw her, causing him to gain color. As David continues to talk about the importance of expressing feelings, other people in the courthouse turn colorful as well. Bob gets angry, but David just taunts him until he snaps and gains color too. Everyone gasps and Betty gives David a mirror so Bob can face the truth. As a horrified Bob runs away, a person tells everyone in the courtroom to come out. The crowd rushes to the street and are pleasantly surprised to see the whole town is now full of bright colors. After Margaret kisses David, he wanders to the television store and sees they're finally showing images of the outside world, also in color. Later, Jennifer tells David that she's going to stay in this world for a while, hoping she can go to college here. David promises to come back and check on her soon, then they hug. After Jennifer leaves on a bus, David goes home and Margaret asks him to never forget about her while giving him a sandwich. Betty gifts him a cardigan and says she's proud of him. Then the women watch David use the remote to finally go back to his world. Back in his living room, the Pleasantville Marathon is about to start, but David turns the TV off and goes to check on his mom, who is crying in the kitchen. She shares her worries and David offers some advice, shocking her with how smart he's become. In Pleasantville, life is now colorful and changeable. Betty and George sit on a bench discussing their future and Bill soon joins them. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.